You're live.
All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. Today we're doing little something different today with our roundtables. We're actually bringing in the new year. Um, Usually, bringing in the new year a little bit different. Some of you may have noticed there's a breaking the silence on domestic violence. We just recently switched our name to SWAT, and today we're going to talk about our organization and talk about our executive director, Ms. Benita Council Howard.
Yes. Hi, everybody. This is a little different for me as well. So yeah, as Mr. Hennis said, we did change the name of Breaking the Silence to SWAT, which is Survivors with a Testimony. And we are moving forward to bring awareness on such a touchy subject. Domestic violence is something that a lot of people do not want to talk about. So we have been in the hedges and the highways, bringing awareness on every form of abuse that you can think of. We even have our leaders talking. Before everybody said, "Oh, the leaders are not going to talk." Well, we've been doing work and we have them talking. We even have the men talking. So as you know, a lot of people say, well, only women talk about it. No, it don't happen to just women. It happened to men too. So you guys can follow us. You're going to see some things about the roundtables really spreading awareness on domestic violence.
Great. Definitely an issue that needs to be more talked about, especially in our community. I hate to say that, when it comes to domestic violence, it's kind of a taboo. A lot of people don't talk about it. A lot of people will sweep it under the rug in all forms and all institutions. So we need more awareness about it. So one of the first things I want to ask you is, what made you passionate about providing services for victims and survivors of domestic violence?
Well, what made me passionate, Mr. Hennett, is I am a survivor myself. So through domestic violence, I lost a son. My daughters deal with generational curses, from seeing it. So I didn't want anyone to go through what I went through with burying a child due to someone else's actions and going through trauma. When you go through domestic violence, a lot of times you're traumatized to a certain extent. And for me, I shut down for 20 years around Christmas time for losing, because I lost my son through domestic violence. His birthday would have been December the 23rd. So
Mm.
actually he will be 20, 25, 24, 25. And so for 20 years, I shut down until God blessed me with my first grandson. And from there, I knew that my son needed a voice. And so, what better way to give him a voice than to help others?
Definitely. My condolences for your loss. There are a lot of people that's dealing with different kinds of losses who've been in domestic violence. I mean, that's something that we normally talk about during our roundtable, is the traumatic and the trauma that some people experience as far as domestic violence. Um, Now, other than being the executive director of SWAT, tell people more about who you are.
So, I am a minister of the word. I love the Lord with everything on the inside of me. I am an author. I am a poet. I am a mother. I am a grandmother. I am a wife. um, and so, all of those things bring me joy.
And so you're all those things and an executive director. That's a lot. That's a lot on your plate. So how did your husband feel about you taking on this task of bringing awareness and education as far as domestic violence? How does he feel about you kind of sort of putting your life in other people's hands or putting your life in jeopardy? How does he feel about that?
So, even though I'm the forefront, my husband is very supportive of what I do. Um, Before major decisions, when I have to go out, he knows where I'm going. But as far as my support, He is a major part of my support system. He he got to see me when I was down. For 14 years he seen me down. Well, not 14, 10. He seen me down, and then 4, he has seen me blossom into this person that's willing to help others. So he has been a major, major, major support system in making sure that I spread awareness and help others.
That's great. As being a advocate also and someone who's married, I mean, we need support of our mates. That's key in order for us to do what we do in the community. Because if we didn't have that kind of support, I mean, we could never, fully, help, other survivors or other victims for it. I commend them on it. I know it's a hard task.
It is.
especially you getting phone calls at nighttime and you doing rescues and stuff like that. I know it can be difficult. I mean, it's not be taken lightly. Like I said, I commend them on that. Now, like I said, most people know you from your other organization. So tell us what's your mission and vision for SWAT.
So, as you stated, everybody knew Breaking the Silence. Breaking the Silence was just my baby, that was like my footwork. And so God gave me a vision in December. And with my board, we changed the name to SWAT. And so with SWAT, we're going to do a little bit more than what we've done with Breaking the Silence. We're still going to educate our community um, on healthy relationships, because that's the key with domestic violence. They do not understand what a healthy relationship is. We're going to work with community partners to provide education, awareness, and services for the healing process. We are not leaving our men out. We're going to, teach and guide our men, what healthy relationships are. And we truly believe that if we start with the head, it will help to eliminate some of the violence that we're seeing within our communities, within our homes. We're not just there for those that have been abused. We are there for the families as well. We will be there for families who have been affected by the physical, the emotional, the financial, the spiritual, mental, psychological. We're going to be there every step of the way. We're committed to providing awareness and education to prevent domestic violence across the nation. And our vision is that we will help survivors of domestic violence in North Carolina, but not limited to, improve the safety by helping them to exercise their legal rights and exploring options to help them make their abuser accountable for his or her actions. And that's one of the things. We will offer no judgment. We will allow them to know it's not their fault. We believe them. We will be with them every step of the way. We will offer a no judgment zone.
Well, that's good because I believe, as far as domestic violence, a lot of people tend to shy away from it or tell family members because of the shame, because of judgment.
Mhm.
So when you say no judgment, that needs to be more vocal or more put out there in the atmosphere and in the community. That as advocates, we pass no judgments on it. Some of our advocates are survivors of domestic violence, and we help because we at one point in time needed help or we had to help someone else. So when you say no judgment, that's key. That's key for everybody that's out there listening, that whenever you are trying to help someone, there's no judgment in it. There's no judgment in it at all, because we don't want to shame anybody not asking for help or getting help. Now,
Exactly. And we're not just about helping just the women. We are offering assistance to men and women, um, allowing them to know that they're not alone. We will advocate for adults and teens and children. So, we're there. Whatever was meant to break them is going to be their breakthrough, because we're going to push until something happens to make sure that batterer is held accountable for his or her actions. And I keep saying his or her, and I keep stressing that because an abuser is not just a man, and it can be a woman as well. I know people don't want to talk about it, but hey, that's what I'm about. I'm going to keep it 100. I'm going to keep it real.
That the male section of domestic violence is kind of a not talked about section of domestic violence. A lot of men don't like to talk about it because of the shame itself, because men just don't like to. I mean, I say this, being as a black man in my community, we just don't like to talk about certain issues. Being a survivor or a victim of domestic violence, that's one of those issues that we don't like to talk about. But as an organization, we're out here to save lives. So forget shaming and feeling being prideful. As a man, what information that you're giving out and talking about and educating people can save lives. So
Exactly.
the men that's out there that's listening, it's about what we do as an organization is about saving lives, excuse me. Now we're talking about your organization. Tell us a little bit more about what things that you're doing in your organization, and how did you come up with the name SWAT?
Okay, so we were breaking the silence, and of course that's what we was doing. But if anybody know me, they know I'm up all times of the night. Prayer, and everything. And so God had gave me a vision about SWAT, survivors with a testimony, because a lot of the people that we bring in are survivors, or they are people going through that are eventually going to be a survivor. And so when he gave it to me, I began to research to see if it was anybody else out there with that name. And I couldn't find anybody. So I went on the IRS website, just like you're supposed to do. And we couldn't find anybody. I went to the North Carolina Department of Treasury, could not find anybody, done everything that we needed to do. And it really stuck out because we're even dragging over the logo. My life is my story. And if your life is your story and you are a survivor, you have a testimony.
True.
So, that's important. My life is my story. I'm here so I can tell my story. And so I am a survivor with a testimony. And I know with telling my story, I can help somebody else. I used to be that person. I used to be shamed. I was ashamed of what I went through. I felt guilty because I lost a child. I felt guilty because I went back, And so, I felt like this was my fault that I went through all of this, but it wasn't. It was not my fault for someone else's actions. The only thing that is my fault is my actions. And so to be able to tell my story, my life is my story. I'm here, I'm telling it, and I am a survivor. So with that, that's how we got survivors. We got SWAT, survivors with a testimony, because that's what a majority of us on this team is, a survivor.
So when it comes to other people that's out there that's been through some of the same thing that you've been, they do have a testimony, but you said that you waited to tell yours 20 years. How did you come about telling your story or telling your testimony and finally breaking through to be able to talk about what happened with you?
Okay, so a young lady that I used to work with, she came up to me one day. I was actually her supervisor. And she said to me, Miss Howard, can you MC for me? MC for what? She said, I'm having a domestic violence program. And I was like, well, I'm going to get back with you. And I was saying to myself, like, God, you're so funny, because I had literally been praying like, God, I'm tired. I was at a point in my life where I was tired. I was tired of being, just ashamed of what I went through. I was just tired. And so he was like, it's okay, you can do it. Nah, I don't want to tell my story. I ain't ready for that yet. And so I remember going there and seeing whatever. And I told a portion. And it was like, so much lifted off of me that night. So I came home and I talked to my best friend, and she said, well, why don't we do something in the community? I'm like, well, who gonna talk? I don't like to be around people like that. Well, what are you talking about? She was like, okay, well, and God kept dealing with me. And so I came back to her and I was telling her, she said, well, I don't think he wanted to be a one-time program. He wanted us to really do something in the community. She said, but I'm not going to be up. I'm not going to be in the forefront. What do you mean? Who's going to be in the forefront? Oh, okay. We're going to get people. And so, but God continued to deal with me. And the more that I began to, tell my story, go through therapy, go through counseling, it has become a part of my healing process. So I'll say to anybody, don't hold it in. Talk about it. It might not be where you're talking about it to a platform full of people, but just talk about it, because the more you talk about it, it helps. And for me, it honestly helped me so much. Um, to now we're here, spreading awareness, being educated, advocating for others. And if my story only saves one person's life, that's enough for me. It's not about me. It's about making sure they're educated, made aware of what domestic violence is. Because honestly, in our community, they seen grandpa do it, daddy do it, Joe Blow across the street do it. So it's a part of a norm that they don't see anything wrong with it. But the key to it now is we need to educate on it. Education, prevention, and awareness is important in what we do.
Now, as we talk about different issues along with domestic violence in our community or in the community altogether, one of the things that we do bring issues or do bring awareness on too is how domestic violence has affected the mental health or mental health of others. Do you think the therapy helped with your healing process as far as domestic violence?
So, just like with therapy and with counseling, it's important that people understand this. If you have a toothache, you're not going to go to a podiatrist. You know what I mean? You're going to go to a dentist to get your teeth taken care of. So, the same thing when you're dealing with trauma and domestic violence, my first therapist didn't help because I just picked a therapist, just to be doing something, but it really didn't help because they wasn't getting down to the nitty gritty, like what was really going down, what was really happening. Now, my therapist that I have now, and I still have this therapist, which is an intricate part of my healing process. The first day that I went in to see her, I said, listen, you're going to be just like him. I don't even know why I'm here. You ain't going to help me, you know. And she said to me, how do you know what I'm going to do? You're judging me based off of somebody else. And so she said to me, what is it that you want out of this? Because no matter what I want, it's what you want. So what are you going to put in there to get your healing? What are you going to put in, to get where you want to be, where you need to be? And she said, if you're coming here looking for me to feel sorry for you, you're in the wrong place. Those was very strong words. She said,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
She said, even if you come in here and don't talk when you walk out, you're going to pay. Your choice, what you want to do.
Right. They get paid whether you participate or not. But when we tell people that they need, healing or therapy or medication management as far as their mental health, for people that's listening out there, it's always helpful that you have to actively participate in your own healing process.
Yes.
You have to be willing to do the work, put in the work. And what's your favorite scripture about works?
Faith without works is dead. So if you don't do anything, listen, and I keep this 100 with me being a minister. I love the word, but You know, I'm not with just giving somebody a scripture and not breaking it down.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible also say my testimonies are my delight. So meaning I need to tell my testimonies, you know, to help somebody else. But even going to see my therapist, I'm glad that she was the type of therapist she is, because I could have just went in there and said, talk to her or not talk to her and not got the help that I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important when people talk about their mental health, because I was paraprofessional for 11 to 12 years, meaning I advocated for those with mental disabilities. Trauma causes mental effects on you. Okay. So take care of your mental health. It is important that you take care of your mental state of being.
A lot of people don't realize how important, you know, your mental health is in your daily life, and how much things, you know, tend to chip away at your mental health. I mean, it could be, you know, not just, you know, something traumatic. It could be something that you may have experienced
Mhm.
that maybe, you know, triggered you, and you may not even know that you had a bad experience with it, you know, from 10, 15, 20 years ago. But people need to
Exactly.
realize, you, like I said, how important your mental health is when we talk about underlying issues, for other triggers as far as mental health, like PTSD, you know, anxieties and stuff like that. People don't realize that, you know, that those are associations, or let me see how can I explain it. Those are diagnoses that can be triggered by something else. So
Exactly.
you may think that you know, swept domestic violence under the rug, or, you know, got out of the situation unharmed, or, you know, even if you weren't abused or physically abused by, there's still things that can trigger it. There's still things that somebody can talk or say something.
Hmm.
Like, I know one woman who she had anxieties from loud noise, and it was because her husband always used to yell at her. And I had another person who was triggered by certain, you know, the closing of the refrigerator. And
Mm.
that's because she was beaten into the refrigerator, and the boyfriend was always hitting her with the refrigerator. So every time the refrigerator door closed, she always had that trigger with her.
Yeah. And for me, the B word is a trigger. Um, I was called that so much that that's a word that I cannot stand. Period, point blank. Whether you're talking to me or not, it still has an effect on me. Like, um, I just do not like that word. And it was during during the time when I was married to my first husband. So let me clarify that. My first husband, you know, that's like something that he would say all the time if I did not, you know, make him happy. And every time we got into an argument, that's who I became. And so that was a trick. Now that's a trigger for me. I don't like the word. If I hear it, it kind of, you know, put me on, it makes me tense. So I don't like people to joke with the word, to say the word. That's just not, I'm just not happy with that word.
And
So,
it's a
you
good.
know,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead. Mhm.
I was going to say it's a good thing that you brought that kind of trigger up, because we talk about different forms of domestic violence, or domestic abuse. So one of the forms of domestic abuse is verbal abuse. Can you talk more about, you know, what, you know, verbal abuse is and what it does to someone that's in a domestic violence relationship?
So, there's you can do verbal and nonverbal communication, nonverbal abuse, meaning they don't say anything, their looks, their actions, you know that it is intentional to harm you. Verbal abuse as well, even though abuse is not always physical, and we talk about that. When they degrade you, um, they call you out your name, they belittle you with wording. All of that is a form of verbal abuse. And so when a person feel like they need to do that to gain power control, they are still abusing you. Even though there's no physical marks, that's still abuse. And I have this saying, all abuse is not visible.
It's not. One of the things that we do talk about too also is financial abuse. Can you talk more about financial abuse and why that certain kind of abuse help keeps survivors or victims in a domestic violence relationship?
Okay, so a lot of times you'll ask a survivor, well, why didn't you leave? People say, well, why shouldn't just leave? Well, finances play a major part in why people stay. A person could be financially abusing you by, having control of your finances, making you feel that you cannot make it without their income, or taking your income and allowancing you. For me, I worked when I was with my first husband, but I got an allowance out of my paycheck. I worked 40 hours a week, every week, but I was only allowed a certain amount of money each month. I didn't see any harm with it. I was like, oh, okay, he's paying the bills. I didn't realize. But even out of that, because of the abuse that he caused me, I will have to purchase makeup out of the 200. And I'm going to go ahead and throw it out. It was $250 a month. So, quote unquote, he was teaching me budgeting, but really he was taking my money.
And another forms of financial abuse is that he may create a hardship by quitting a job or making you quit your job. That way that, is either he's the only breadwinner or you become the only breadwinner in the home.
Exactly.
For a lot of people that's out there now, it's all about manipulation when it comes to domestic violence and domestic abuse. So whenever you're in a relationship, you got to be worried about how your partner is manipulating. And they do forms of manipulation through money. So for the young people that's out there that think about, as they quote, they say is getting the bag comes with strings. Comes with strings along with it, purse strings. Abusers love to control the purse strings, whether they're giving you money or making you give them money or controlling the finances. But that's like I said, that's a form of abuse that keeps a survivor or a victim in a domestic violence relationship. They never want to leave because it's hard to think of how am I going to survive outside of this life that I've known, or create a lifestyle that you've always known, and have the fear of it being yanked away from you, or you not being able to survive outside of that lifestyle.
Right. And so when if we look at how the steps of domestic violence, and there are 3 phases that you go through: the tension building, you go through the crisis phase, and then the honeymoon. Okay, so in any form of abuse, the tension rises, and they make you feel like you have to walk on eggshells. They make you feel like something is going to happen if you don't satisfy them. That's what we talk about when we're talking about tension building. They make you feel like everything has to be perfect. And at that moment, you're making everything imperfect for that being, And so the tension builds. So after the tension builds, then you go into this crisis where they blow up. They may hit you. They may do the verbal abuse where they, screaming at you, yelling at you, whatever. And they may even call destruction, they call fear in you. And if you're going through that, I need people to understand this is not healthy. Um, Even during crisis, sometimes they abuse drugs or alcohol. And then after they've caused all this harm, they come back with, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
I love you. This is your honeymoon period. They give you whatever you've asked for. You know, they tell you it'll never happen again. You made them do it, but you understand, I love you. Let me make this clear. Love doesn't hurt. And if you have to be fearful of the person that you're in a relationship with, if you have to walk on eggshells, if you cannot be you around that person, that's not who you need to be with.
That is one of the things too that when we talk about or when we educate people about domestic violence, we have to let them know, or people that's in a relationship have to know that when you start changing in your relationship, or your mate starts making you change in your relationship, changing who you are, who you hang around with, who you talk to, how different you act. Like I said, that's a form of manipulation, and it's
Mhm.
about getting a leverage on you. So when the abuse starts, it's easier for the abuse to start because you've already changed your habits. You've already changed who
Mhm.
you are. You've already cut off certain people based on what they said, based on their action. You start hanging out with certain people and stuff like that. Your circle becomes even smaller and smaller when the only people within your circle is just you and him, or you
Mhm.
and her. So, like I said, that's a form of manipulation. Whenever abusers do that, be wary of that. Be wary of who you are, or who you are with, because you're going to see more signs of abuse within that circle. You know, it, the people that notice it is only you and him. So the abuser's not going to shy away from it.
And most of the time, when they're isolating you, they isolate you away from your family, your norm, you know. And if they have you around anybody, it's around their family. You know why? Because their family is going to condone the behavior. They're gonna um they're gonna condone it, and it's gonna always be your fault.
Right.
It's rare that they say, "Oh well, I know how he is. You don't have to go through that." Most of the time, the enablers are their family members because they know what they will do. They've seen them do it, and you're not the first one that
Hmm.
they've done it to. But if they can isolate you away from your family and give you all this stuff to make it seem like they're the only person who cares.
Usually, usually, just that was key. What you just said, that you've not been the first victim. Usually, it's like a sibling, or another family member that's kind of close to them, or even a parent that they've manipulated, that they've you know tried this on before. um, Especially enablers are mothers, aunts, grandmothers, stuff like that, people who've been around them and condone, or let them slide with the rage and the anger that they have, or slide with the things that they say to them. But they, like I said, that they've mistreated other people that's in their family. They've tried this on, that
Mhm.
it's nothing new to them. They've been cultivating this craft for a while. So when you're in that relationship, you may think that it's going to pass, or you may think that maybe the person may be going through a stage. It's not. That is a normal way of life.
Mhm. It is. And again, when they have an enabler, it gives them more power and control. We have to realize domestic violence is about power and control, you know, and sometimes the family don't say anything because they're fearful of who the abuser is themselves.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this: when it came to picking this issue within the community, why did you choose to help? Other than your own story, why did you choose to help domestic violence victim, and why this organization instead of another organization?
Okay, so the reason I decided to help other victims is because there was limited help for me. Even though, now let me say this, the deputies that used to come out to the house, it is a pleasure to actually sometimes be on stage with one of the deputies that used to try to educate me on what I was going through at the time, which was domestic violence.
Mhm.
So leaving with my life and doing the research and see how many people lose their life after leaving. Yes, I lost a child, which is sad within itself, but I could have also lost my life, you know? And so the reason I decided to help other people is because I didn't want anybody to go through what I went through. Now, the reason I decided to open my own organization was because even when you go in other organizations, it's limited. And I can't go and work somewhere and cannot be grateful for God sparing my life. A lot of them, you can't talk about God. Um, and I'm not going to go anywhere where I can't give credit to my father. I'm just not going to. And so the best thing for me to do, and with the guidance and prayer and, meditation, was to open my own organization. So I can ask questions. Um, I don't ever want it to be where I'm helping someone and they say, well, my pastor said I can't leave, or my pastor gave me this scripture, and not be able to respond back to them. I can't be that person. And with having our own, I can ask, hey, can I go talk with you and your pastor together? Or because I have no issue with that. But that is the key. I have to be able to give credit to who saved me. And I know if it wasn't God in the midst and having a purpose and a plan for my life, I probably wouldn't even be here. So he spared me, and because he did, my testimony will be everywhere. And I will not walk lightly, allow somebody to know, okay, I've been through it. I'm okay. I'm still going through the healing process, and I don't want to be limited to how I heal.
So, in your healing process, religion, um, church, and God was very important to you. Now, let me ask you this: how have you and the domestic violence community? How have you bridged the gap between domestic violence and the religious community?
So, from working in the field for over 5 years now, um, a lot of events that I was doing, or young ladies that was coming to me, they was telling me about, well, my pastor said, if they were married, God frowned upon divorce, and the pastor was using the scripture against them, to keep them in that relationship for whatever reason. And
Mhm.
so for me, it was important, so important, to be able to begin to talk to these leaders, to educate them on what spiritual abuse is, what domestic violence is. And so one of the things, after we switched the name over to SWAT, and right before we switched, God had gave me a vision, and I went to the board about getting the leaders to talk. Now, I'm going to tell you, it was like cut teeth because some of them didn't want to talk. Okay. So, with my team and up all times of night, and I'm just being real, constantly sending messages. I'm learning. A lot of times people don't want to talk because they really don't know what it is. And so now we have opened it up where we're actually sitting down with the leaders on a round table. They're expressing their views. When we send them the questionnaire, I send them scriptures with it. Be ready, because I've studied, prayed, and God has led me as well. So, with that being said, um, we are actually in March doing a leaders training where we're going to train them on what domestic violence is. We're going to train them that you can't bring these people together to get an answer if one is being abused and one is not. We got local law enforcement that's joining with us to bring this awareness. We have other organizations that's going to join with us. It will be virtual. And, this is one of our paid program, paid events. It's $55, but that covers 3 people and they have all the training materials. So it was important that SWAT connected with the faith-based community to bring awareness to what domestic violence is and how to handle a domestic violence situation. We can't just handle it as we will if a man or woman come in and say, hey, I'm having a problem. My husband wants to go out and gamble, but I want to come to church. We can't handle that the same way as if this woman come and say, my husband, I know he's your deacon. He just beat me. My eye is black. We can't handle that the same way.
Do you think, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, so do you think that it's now that we've come into this new stage of domestic violence where, like I said, when I talk about domestic violence, I like to talk about it because it has so many layers to it. It's ever changing. Domestic violence 10 years ago is not the same as domestic violence now. So whenever you said that you were doing training for, how important is training for the faith-based community and how much training do they need? I've seen, where the faith-based community or churches, different churches, never talk about domestic violence. Never talk about domestic violence, and they see it daily, or they see it in their church, or they see it, they're sitting on their deacon board or their mother board. So, how important is it for that kind of training?
Not even just being the executive director of SWAT, but being a minister altogether. It's so important because as a leader in the church, people are constantly coming to you with questions, with concerns. And so in October, you'll notice that a lot of churches, they will celebrate breast cancer awareness, right? They'll give you the statistics, they'll give you all that. But if you ask them, hey, can you wear purple for domestic? Oh, we don't talk about that. That don't happen. It don't. It does. And that's why it was important to bring the round tables virtually with our leaders of our local and our local faith-based communities to educate them as well. Since we've been doing it, so many have reached back out and said, hey, the information that I learned from the round table, keep doing what you're doing. So that lets me know that what we're doing is productive, is helping, and it's going to give them a new outlook on what domestic violence is and how to handle it.
That's great. So I know that you're doing, your training, and we're doing, monthly, roundtables for education and awareness. So with those trainings and all the things that you're doing as far as this organization, where do you see this organization going?
So I do see a lot of the things that we're doing going global. meaning that it's not going to just be North Carolina that be educated, but
Mhm.
it's going to be global. It's going to be international. You know why? Because it's not just happening in North Carolina. It's not just happening on the East Coast. It's not just happening on the. It's happening all over. And so, with networking and people coming in from all around the world, they need to know. They need to be educated. And so I know that eventually it will be international to the point where we're going to be spreading awareness everywhere. And the point of it being virtual, because once you put it on the internet, it's there. You don't know who's going to view it,
Right.
but it's good information to get out to our people.
That being said, you put it out on the internet and, we broadcast, different, things that we talk about domestic violence. And it's always important as far as this. Uh, People need to realize is that there's a mind state when it comes to domestic violence. There's a mind state that, that the people that are in abusive situations, it's about power and control. That we need to view people as not someone that we're subjugated, that we need to view our mates as someone, or someone that we're in a relationship as an equal. I mean, if we're going to be global and we're going to talk about it, we're going to talk about some of the things that that's the mind state, that part right there. When we talk about that, let's talk about other issues along with it. There are some countries now that women are just getting the access to even vote. There
Hmm.
are some countries that women weren't able to drive.
Hmm.
Women weren't able to, women weren't able to had to be fully clothed, you know, and
Hmm.
stuff like that. So when we become more global, we're really getting down to the heart of the issues that we're talking about, women or people that's in abusive relationships having power and control over.
Hmm. And that's what I love too about the roundtables, because even though we talk about domestic violence, we're also able to educate on healthy relationships. You know, a lot of people don't know what a healthy relationship is. They don't even know the difference between an unhealthy relationship versus a toxic relationship. You know, and so that's why it's so important. Um, I think the end of this month, January the 26th, we have a therapist and a counselor that's going to come on and talk about the trauma that domestic violence causes. Um, you know, it don't. I want people to understand, even when you're going through, it don't just affect you. It affect everybody in that household, and even some people outside of the household that knows what's going on. So it's important. Um, okay. So it's important that we we educate. And again, you know, the reason it's important because, as I was stating earlier, we go through these cycles,
Mhm.
and then we get to this honeymoon period, you know, where everything's going great. You know, you got the flowers, you got the door opening, you got being, um, like you in this wonderful relationship. And then as soon as you say the wrong thing, you're back to tension building. So, okay. So, it's just so important. So, okay.
Now, that's a good thing that you brought that up because this month is usually what, Teen Dating Awareness Month, right?
No, next month is teen dating, but
Teen
this
Dating
month is human trafficking.
Human trafficking. Next month is Teen Dating Awareness, and that's also Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day is also one of the honeymoon parts of being where
Hmm.
they've abused you for so long, and then it comes to Valentine's Day and stuff like that. That is a holiday where they have like to keep you in the relationship. Now, mind you, a lot of triggers happen during the holidays, like Christmas and Thanksgiving and stuff like that, when you're around family. And then it gets to Valentine's Day. And that part is the honeymoon stage part of it. Can you talk more about the honeymoon stage in the domestic violence relationship?
Sure. Okay. So, as he stated, we noticed a rise in abuse during Christmas and Thanksgiving, and especially with the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna give a brief on that. So during the pandemic, we noticed that children are home. Jobs became at-home jobs that was normally where people would go to their place of employment. So you're not just at home working, but now you're home more with your abuser. When we had the lockdown, where you couldn't go out, so now you're stuck together, and so the tension rise, and the abuse is happening more. And if we're going to talk about it, we have to be real about this too. The children's safety net was going to school, so now they're home, mom, dad, or whoever having to teach, work, be mom and dad, or whoever. And so now it's all this added. They don't have any time alone. Okay. So tension rise, more people was being beat, more people was being killed, more people was actually reporting the abuse. Okay. So now with court being extended, every time you turn around, court is closed because there's
Mm-hmm.
a COVID-19 case. So now I got time to make up with Joe Blow or make things seem okay. Because normally what they would have went to court if it happened in November, they have been in court in December. They get their 3 continuances. I mean, I'm just keeping this real. So December, January, February, by February, I really got to make it all right because we going to court. I got to give her whatever she want, or I got to give him. So when we go to court, we can ease this on out. So they do whatever deems right, and they're sweet. The honeymoon period, the calm period, they making you feel like they love you.
Yeah.
Love you. If you never heard it, you probably hearing it. February, you hear so much "I love you," the balloons saying "I love you," but deep down inside, they can't even mimic who you are. But let me tell you this. Let me make you feel good about who you are till I get out of this court case.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Now with this drop, we back together and the tension rise. It happens again. And each time it gets worse. See, I'm not saying something here that I read in a book. I'm saying something here that I know for a fact. I was that person standing in the courtroom about to give birth to a child. I don't want him to go to jail. I don't want to be in the hospital by myself. And that's the issue. Sometimes we don't want to be alone. Fear, we're comfortable. We normalize the behavior. But in reality, we should have them locked up.
When it comes to the court process, I know it's very difficult. I live in Durham, and we had our own domestic violence court because we didn't want survivors or victims just in general court with everybody else. We know they're shamed about the situation. Mm-hmm. So somebody may be coming there, a family may be coming there for a traffic ticket, and you may see them. They don't want to know what's going on. They don't want people to know what's going on in their business. They sure don't want, their own community or our own people to know what's going on. They're trying to hide. They're doing enough hiding to hide black eyes, to hide bruises, to try to hide the beatings and the abuse that they're going through and not be ashamed of it daily. So whenever it comes to the court cases, court in general, I think a lot of consideration needs to be taken in for that part of it. Yeah, we give out, continuances and stuff like that, but we need to prosecute beyond, just this person is actually, beyond the person saying, I want to have charges filed or I want to reduce the charges. They actually committed a crime. A crime happened. So
Mhm.
if we're about stopping crime, we should want to stop crime regardless of whether someone brings. If we know there are visible signs of it, we can see
Mhm.
visible signs of abuse or of an assault, charges right away. I don't care if that person is going to drop or not. I like some places, that do have that law. Like California actually is one of those cases. One of those places that does have that law where if you see visible signs or if the officer sees visible signs, that they prosecute. It's not a person versus another person. It's the state versus that person.
Right. And one thing I like about the judge here in my hometown, I've sat in on a case, and one of the things that she told the young lady when she was issuing the protection order was, when he show you who he is, believe him. Okay? When he show you who he is, believe him. And so I will say that to even the men. If she show you who she is, believe her. This is not a one-sided thing. This is not a one-sided incident. If they show you who they are, believe who they are. Let that be a lesson to say, let me develop me a safety plan. Let me reevaluate this situation. You know, what is your value? How do you value who you are? Because if we don't have, it's like the clearance rack. It
Hmm.
might be some good stuff every now and then on the clearance rack, but oftentimes the clearance rack has been picked through.
Right.
What is your value? And I ask the young ladies that a lot of times when I'm tutoring or I'm mentoring, what is your value? And a lot of times they say, well, what do you mean by that? Because depending on how you value you, what you will allow to happen to you. And if I had valued Vernita, a lot of things wouldn't have happened. But I allow my self esteem to drop. You know, um, I'll allow wanting to mimic what somebody else had to
Hmm.
cause me to be abused. So when you allow your value to decrease, things happen. And it's not always good. I'm just blessed that I got out.
Now, let me ask you this. I know with everything that's going on, and I know you're pretty familiar with the numbers. So let's discuss the numbers as far as domestic violence of cases from last year.
Okay. So we have 50 that has been reported, 50 homicides that was reported in the state of North Carolina. And those statistics are just from January the 1st to September 29th, 2020. So we still have October, November, and December that has to be reported.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, in the town that I live in, three of those was in close vicinity to where I am. Three. So I said that to say this. It gets me when people say, well, that's not happening in my, it is. It's happening. This is the key to it. These statistics was reported.
Mm-hmm.
All are not reported.
I'm not
You
reported.
had those that was just trying to stick this pandemic out. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they felt like they had nowhere to go. Landlords wasn't renting because they didn't know if they was going to get paid. So now I'm stuck in here with my abuser. I don't want to say but so much because people are not letting you in their houses like before because of COVID-19, and we have to keep that real. So I'm kind of stuck here. But it was 50 reported, and some of those are murder suicides where
Yeah.
they take their lives after they've taken somebody else's life. That's the most cowardice thing that you could ever do, because if you get the mindset to take somebody else's life, but you don't want to deal with the punishment that's going to come after it.
Hmm. Now, I know we're in 2020, and we've talked about this, together on different issues on different platforms. But for the people that's out there who, because at one point in time I was a novice about domestic violence. For the people that's out there who are novice, or who were like I was at one point in time, who didn't know about domestic violence and who didn't see domestic violence, or some people may not know that they are in a domestic violence relationship. What are the signs of domestic violence?
Some of the signs are isolation. They isolate you away from your family and your friends. Um, they take power and control over who you around, where you can go. Um, you can't wear this, you can't wear that. Um, as we discussed before, the finances, they take control of the finances. They may come in the house and not say a word to you and make you feel like you've done something to them. The nonverbal gestures. Um, they they may use the word against you. No matter what you study, as far as religion, if they use it against you, all
That's a
you want to
spiritual
do is
abuse.
go to church.
Mhm.
Or all you want to do is go to the hall. Whatever it is, or if you ask them about attending a service or supporting you in that, I'm not doing that. Da, da, da. That's all you do. You run down there, you get on people your money. They make you
Mhm.
feel bad about what you believe. So that's spiritual abuse. And then you have sexual abuse, and sexual abuse happens in marriages too,
Rape
not
and
just
sexual assault happens in
relationships.
marriages. Yes.
So I will say to anybody, if you are engaging in sexual activities and that person say no, stop, or they tell you to stop, stop. Because if not, you just committed rape if you continue going. So that's sexual abuse. Um, then you have the psychological abuse where they play with your mind, um, they make you feel like you're not worthy. They make you feel belittled. Um, so it is it's so many different forms and signs. And so once if you have to be somebody completely different around the person that you're with, that is a sign right there. If you have to change and walk on eggshells, be uncomfortable, you're in an abusive relationship.
Yeah, those are all good signs of a domestic violence relationship or domestic abuse relationship. Now, when I was talking earlier, I said some people may not know of that they're in a domestic violence or abusive relationship. Can you talk about what a healthy relationship is versus a toxic relationship?
Okay, so a healthy relationship is being involved with someone where you guys can talk, you communicate without yelling, you communicate without screaming. Now, when you're in a healthy relationship, you're not going to always agree, but it's good to agree to disagree. And if that person don't make you feel belittled or, unhappy in who you are, you're in a pretty healthy relationship. If you guys can voice your opinions without and agree to disagree, it's okay. You're in a healthy relationship. Now, a toxic relationship, there's screaming, there is yelling, there is um, degrading. Um, The tone, the tone is very important in a toxic relationship. Um, if the tone is where they're demanding and just screaming and yelling at you, you need to rethink the relationship. It's toxic, it's unhealthy. And an unhealthy relationship can have you in a state of depression,
Mhm.
or you know, where you're holding everything in. You don't want to talk because you don't want it to escalate to toxic. So you hold in your feelings, you hold in you don't voice an opinion at all. It's like, well, whatever, just to get through the day or get through that conversation. That's not healthy.
Now, when I talk about a toxic relationship, I tell people that a toxic relationship poisons every other relationship that you have. Poisons your relationship with your family, your
Yeah.
friends, co-workers, your job, and also a toxic relationship also impairs you because poison it makes you impaired. It makes you do other things that you wouldn't normally do. Now, can you also talk about how domestic violence affects children and family members within that relationship?
Yes. Okay. So I'm just going to tell a bit of my story here so people can see how domestic violence really affects children. So, as you all know, I am a survivor. My oldest daughter, when we would notice that when I would talk to her father once we separated, but we didn't talk, we screamed and yelled at each other. Whenever he was caught, we was screaming, we was yelling, we was cursing, and we was fussing. And the stress from us not being adults or being able to communicate one with another will cause my daughter to have seizures.
Mm.
And so I didn't have full custody of my children. We had joint custody of the children. And so I had to go all over North Carolina to get her help. Durham, Chapel Hill, whatever. So she could see a neurologist. I couldn't keep a job because before I would take her wherever, him and I was screaming and, just screaming, yelling, and just it was toxic. And it wasn't just toxic for me, it was toxic for the children as well. Well, um, I lost plenty of jobs because by the time I get to work, I'm getting a phone call. I need to go to the emergency room. My daughter just had a seizure.
Mm.
So the effect that it had on my children that lived, you know, um, it had a major effect. So what I'm saying is domestic violence doesn't just affect the person that's going through. It affects everybody within the vicinity of that person who see the abuse happening. So children are affected. By no means don't you ever think that your children don't know what's going
Right.
on with you. Children know way more than what we give them credit
Mhm.
for. They pay attention to your vibe. They pay attention to your body language. They know when you're having a good day. They know when you're having a bad day. And as a parent, seeing a child go through abuse is one of the most hurting feelings because the more that you try to tell them to walk away, sometimes it seems like the closer they draw to the manipulator.
Right. Hmm.
But you have to understand a manipulator is exactly that. They know how to manipulate the situation to make that person think it's going to get better. So don't ever think that just one person is affected. Everybody is affected. And that's why SWAT does what they do. For families who are affected financially, spiritually, sexually, whatever, we're there to offer the support that they need. So, yes, children are definitely affected by domestic violence situation.
When we talk about how children are affected by domestic violence, a lot of people don't realize, just like you said, what children see and what children may take. When you have a child that's experiencing domestic violence within their marriage or their relationship, they see a parent or a parent and their mate going through domestic violence or abuse. They may also mimic that kind of lifestyle or kind of relationship, where versus that you have a male child, they may become an abuser because that's the only example of what a man was or how to treat a woman. Versus where you have a female child that's in a relationship, she sees that type of relationship and she wants to be within that type of relationship. She only knows about chaos. She only knows how to operate in chaos because her home life was about chaos. And when we talk about it, when we tell people to be mindful of their relationships they have, they also need to be mindful of that they're creating or can create generational curses. Can you talk about generational curses more as far as domestic violence?
Sure. So, one of the statistics, when I looked up statistics of, dealing with the children and different things like that. So, if they sit within their home, statistics say 25 to 50% of them will become an abuser. 50 to 75% may die.
Mm.
And 25% becomes an advocate. More people die.
Mm-mm-mm.
So for me, I just want to throw those stats out. So when we talk about generational curses, those are things that we have been brought up in to deem that it's okay. It's happening in our communities. It's happening in our homes. And so for me, I was introduced to domestic violence. And here's the deal. My first husband seen it within his family. He seen his dad do this to his mom. So to him, it was okay. This is how you take control of your woman. This is how you be the head of the household. She needs to listen. Okay. So this has happened. It happened in front of my children. Okay. So now my daughter, and the sad thing is, after all that I do, I think it was October, my daughter was in an abusive marriage. And for my daughter to cry out for help, I was in the middle of a round table that night.
Mm.
Everything in this house was going off. The phones, the computers. I'm like, what in the world? But to see that happening to my child, I couldn't get there. But because of the work that I do, people got in their cars from Cary, from Durham, from Greenville, and went and got my baby. So generational curses happen, but you have to break them. Meaning, you have to educate, you have to break them bonds, you have to allow them to know it's not okay. You have to teach them what a healthy relationship is and what a toxic relationship is. We can't wait till they turn teens to start talking to them. And the reason being about generational curses is February is Teen Dating Balance Month. So statistics say by the time they turn a teen, they're going to develop or go through some form of violence. So we need to start educating them at a young age, educating our men, our little boys to know it's not all right to hit a girl, and allowing our girls to know it's not all right to hit our boys.
Right.
That's how you begin to start breaking those generational curses. You teach them the right way. You teach them what a healthy relationship is. You teach them not what we were taught. Oh, he hit you. That means he liked you.
Right. Grew up with that.
No. Stop teaching them what goes on in this house stays in this house. Those are generational curses. Those are phrases that keep the things happening over and over. I'm not saying that mommy and daddy get in an argument, you have to go. But if daddy is beating on mama, go tell it. If mama beating on, go tell somebody. They need some help. So to break the generational curses, educate, prevention, and awareness is what breaks generational curses.
I know when I was doing research on domestic violence, the numbers say that the fastest growing category is actually, I think, 15 to 22 year olds. Within that category of the fastest growing, you've had underlining issues as far as domestic violence. When it happens with domestic violence, you find out there's high school dropout. You find out that there's early teen pregnancy,
Hmm.
or there is a second pregnancy within those years. So when I sit here and we talk about generational curses, those are some things that can be, created by having a child that's exposed to domestic violence early on in their life. It's chaos. It's chaos. They see nothing but chaos. Some of them, some of them do thrive within it, but the numbers are higher that they don't thrive within it. Like I said, you get more high school dropouts, you
Hmm.
get more pregnancies, you get more, drug abuse or alcohol abuse.
Alcohol abuse. Hmm. Yeah.
So, and like I said, those can be generational curses. Things like drug abuse and alcohol abuse, addiction are can be hereditary.
Right. And so, we see it, and now it's time to call it out. It's time to um it's time to say, hey, enough is enough. You know, um we not going to allow this to destroy our family anymore. We're going to put our hold on it. This is what we're going to do. And so that's why domestic violence is spreading awareness and advocating is so important to me.
Is very important. And like I said, you need to call it out. I mean, that's something that that on every level, man, woman, child, we should call out and say it's wrong. It's
Hmm.
wrong on every level. It's wrong if you abuse your mate. It's wrong if you manipulate your mate. It's wrong if you make your mate take on a financial burden from you. It's wrong.
Hmm.
Abuse is wrong no matter what, and we should call it out on every level. Um,
Exactly.
Now, when it comes to victims that are in a domestic or abusive relationship, um, they tend to take a few times to leave for good. What can you say to the family members and friends that that have victims in that process?
Okay, so honestly, it takes 7 to 12. Statistics say it takes an average of um, 7 times before a person actually leave their abuser. It can take 7 to 12 times before they actually say, look, enough is enough. Okay. But if a person trusts you and come to you and say, hey, I'm in this type of relationship, this is what's happening. Don't offer your opinion. Don't be
Mm.
so judgmental. That person obviously, number one, trusted you. So they came to you to talk to you. Don't be so quick to offer what they should do and how they should handle it. The key thing is listen, because obviously, again, they trust you, and that's hard. When you have been abused, it's hard to trust anybody. Hard. So allow them, if they came to you to tell you about the situation, make sure they start getting important documents together. Be that listening ear. But if you're going to offer advice, offer good advice. Listen. Google tells you everything. A lot of people use Google. Make that a time that you say, you know what? Let me see what you need for a safety plan. Let's reach out to some people and see if they can help you develop a safety plan. Don't say, girl, I don't know why you still there. Listen, she or he is already going through enough. They don't need you putting them down.
Mm-hmm.
If they came to you again, and I keep it reiterating this, they trust you. Be that no judgment zone that they need.
It's a good thing that you said that because what do you think is a good strategy or good process as far as developing a safety plan to leave?
All right. So one of the key things is um if you go to a person, you talk to them and they say, well, hey girl, you could drop some things off, through here. Grab clothes, grab all your important documents, your birth certificate, the children birth certificates, the children's social security cards, their school, their school IDs, their immunization record, you know,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
everything that everything that you would need to register that child in school, make sure that you have it. Anything that identifies who your child is, make sure that you have it. Also make sure that you have um clothing. Listen, you can't just walk out with a bag. It's not that easy. I'm never gonna tell anybody it's that. But if that person say, if you constantly just taking a little bit by a little bit, because if you take too much, your abuser is already looking.
Mm.
Listen, they paying attention. So at this point, you have to outsmart your abuser. Just take little stuff. If extra keys to the car, get them made. So even if you have to leave on foot that night, if you got to come back and take your car, you have an extra set of keys. Um, Cell phones. Let me tell you guys about cell phones. A lot of
Hmm.
people don't know this, but if you have a blank cell phone, it can be off. Keep it charged. So if you ever have to leave in a rush and you need 911, you can call them. Never tell your abuser that you're leaving.
Mm.
Anytime there are bruises, take a picture. That's what that other cell phone is good for. 9 out of 10, they're not going to even bother that phone because it's off. Keep it charged, but keep it off. The less they know, the best it is. But have your proof So if you have to leave, and that one person that you can trust, allow them to know. But let me tell you about this person that you trust. Do not go to a mouthy family member that always tell you, girl, I'm going to tell you such and such, but don't tell nobody. That's a key right there. They going to tell somebody because they just told you. That shouldn't be a person that you trust, okay? So make sure that the person you trust knows how to keep their mouth closed. If you're planning on leaving, don't go anywhere where your abuser know where you normally frequent visit. Now, unless your daddy gonna be standing to the door if homeboy come there, okay?
Right.
You know, I'm just keeping this 100 with y'all. But those are some of the key things to creating a safety plan. And I have to be honest with you guys. Leaving don't always, as I stated, leaving has, with statistics, 50 to 75% of people die when they leave. So that's why a lot of people are scared to leave. They're
Right.
fearful. So they normalize the behavior just to stay. So it's important that we
A lot of things that I tell people when they ask me as far as a safety plan and some of the safety plans that I develop is I tell people to get a PO box. Get a PO box,
mm-hmm.
and whenever you are leaving, change your bills out of your name and give that PO box as your next address. Like I said, one of the things in an abusive relationship is they create financial hardship. Creating financial hardship is damaging your credit. So running up bills in your name is a way to damage your credit. So when you leave, change everything out. Change everything to that PO box. Take him off as an authorized user for any bills that you have
Mm-hmm.
that he can't get access to, that he may try to get access to. I also tell people, when you talk about phones, it doesn't have to be any kind of phone. It could be a burner phone. When I mean burner phone, it could be a prepaid phone.
Yeah.
It could be a prepaid phone that you only activate when you know it's time to leave.
Exactly.
It has a few numbers that's on it. Also, too, I advise people too when I tell them to developing a safety plan. It's okay to quit your job. It's okay to quit your job and find another one, or tell your job that you need some time off. There are laws. There are laws for that.
And most jobs, if you allow them to know what's going on, they're going to give you a leave of absence anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Is that's one of the things that we ask when we're doing our intake. Do he know where you work? Do she know where you work? And so like any organization that you go to, that's going to be some of the things that they ask. You know, the place that you're living at, do they know? Even when we do your protection order, we don't put your address up there. It's for your safety.
That's a court document. Sometimes abusers get those court documents with your address on it.
Yeah. And so this is why we do what we do. It's important. It's important that people know.
It's a lot. It's heavy. It's heavy, but as advocates, I like to say that I need to feel that heaviness. I need to feel, because I need to feel how important it is, because you are talking about saving somebody's life. You are talking about, possibility someone dying from you not doing what you're supposed to do.
Exactly. Exactly. When I think back, each case that comes in my hand, I often put myself right there. I think about what I went through. I think about how I felt. I think about what was going through in my mind. Um, I think about, there was times that I thought that I wouldn't even be here to raise my children. I think about all of that. I think about how I felt when I lost my son. I think about, when they're telling me, well, now I'm going to be a single mom. And on occasions, I've told them, guess what? You're able to be a single mom to your children. What if you was in my shoes? You have your baby and you have to hand them over.
Mm,
You have to hear someone saying it's a spontaneous abortion.
mm.
You get to still love on your child. You get to still kiss them. You don't have that person, but you have your children. And I often have to continue to remind them, it's not your fault that you went through this. You're not responsible for his or her actions. But what you're responsible for now is those babies and where you want to go from here. That's what you're responsible for.
It's so important whenever we talk to survivors or victims that they know just that part, that it's not your fault, um,
Hmm.
because they've been told that for so long that the reason why that they're being abused is their fault. That the reason why I act this way, the reason why I break this property or break this furniture or punch holes in the wall is because of you. And
Right.
it's kind of a programming. And as advocates, we have to be deprogrammers. When you come out of that abusive relationship, you have to be deprogrammed, because you're taken out of a situation or an environment, and you're being thrust back into an even bigger environment that you had before, and it's different. So that's the reason why we see so many victims or survivors go back to their abusers,
Hmm.
because it's the way of life that they've known for so long, and that the other life that they've been exposed to or had been exposed to before, it seems unfamiliar, or that you see abusers go back to another abuser.
And a lot of times is because even when they do come forward to tell someone, we see the victim blaming.
Mhm.
The people, I don't believe it. He never portrayed that, or she never acted that way. What did you do?
Right.
That's why one of the things in our training with even our intake people, when they're hearing um, a victim on the other line, I know it's my fault. If I just done this, one of the key things they're trying to say is, listen, it's not your fault. I don't care who did not believe you. Guess what? I believe you. And they stop. You know why? Because everybody has told them, I don't believe that, or you must have done something. And now they finally got this one person that say, it's not your fault. I believe you. I believe what you're saying. Let me help you.
Yeah.
And that's how it was with that one particular officer that, I always talk about. Um, when I tell you guys, I was mean to him when he
Mhm.
would come in. I was going through, you want to give me brochures? You don't care. You just the police. He was like, no, ma'am, I believe you. Well, what? You one in a few that believe me. Everybody else think that I'm crazy. So he gave me that. You know what? I believe you. Now, what are you going to do? And I still kept going back until eventually it was enough. It was enough. I just couldn't wrap my mind around losing my son.
Yeah. That's hard. Mm.
And I couldn't look at him the same. And then I hadn't been around him in over 13, 14 years. And so September the 6th of last year was my first time being back around my first abuser. And I'm thinking, I done been through therapy, I done counseling, I'm good. I done healed, I'm able to tell my that was one of the worst days, but I had to be there for the sake of my grandbaby. But it was an uneasy day for me. And I had a lot to learn about Bernita. I still got a lot of healing to do.
Now, other than your own testimony, well, let me say this. I talk about, the catalyst as far as what made me become an advocate. And there was a certain case or a certain experience. Is there a certain case or a certain, person that you advocated for that stands out to you?
Yep. Actually, it was rescuing a male and his children. Um, that was the hardest one because the children were traumatized to be around women.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And you would think um a mother, is loving, we're nurturing, or whatever. But to see the grip those babies had on dad, because I'm the only woman in this vehicle and I had to sit beside one of them, pull so tight that dad, I'm like, but once, we got into it, that was the hardest. To explain to that child, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to help. That was one of the worst and the hardest to ever deal with.
Your heart hurts for, when you see a child that's going through,
Mm-hmm.
or that's in the middle of a domestic violence, because they're used as pawns. They're used as pawns. Um, they're used in just different ways. They get told certain stuff about certain parents, or they view certain parents in a different light. They may see that their mother, is weak, or that their father is, horrible, or they may be a daddy's girl that loves their father and their father is abusive. So that's something that you can't rationale as a child.
And that's why it's important too that people is taught about parental alienation. Alienating the children away, using the children as a pawn, different things like that. So it's important, even in domestic violence, that we educate on that as well. because a lot of people, I didn't even know what it was. All of a
Mhm.
sudden, it just started surfacing, and I'm like, well, what is this? But the education that comes behind it, and um, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you're not wanting to alienate your children away, but because of the fear that you have for your own life, you find yourself pulling away. But what I would say to any parent, your life is important. Keep yourself safe, but don't talk down about the absent parent or the abuser to the child.
Mhm.
And I had to learn that my own self because I was very negative, for 20 years. You know, um, when the girls will want me to be happy, in December. And, I would say to them, it's your dad's fault. You
Uh-huh.
know, um, I don't know how to be happy. Even though I was trying, but the anger and not letting go, I put them through some stuff that wasn't, that's not fair to them.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that, like I said, it takes a child to process, um, that we just don't realize, a lot. Now, we talked about a lot of things, today. Um, Different, like I said, domestic violence is layers. There's different layers to it. I mean, we could talk, hours and hours about domestic violence, and we have talked hours and hours about domestic violence. Now, tell us about upcoming events that you have going on with SWAT.
Okay, so SWAT has a upcoming event this Saturday. It's called Broken but Not Destroyed. It is a virtual roundtable that we have three young ladies, one that was sexually assaulted,
Mm.
um, um, one that went through just domestic violence. Well, it's not just domestic violence, but went through domestic violence, and then the other one went through some abuse with the child and the husband that landed her in jail.
Mm.
And so all this stuff was meant to destroy these young ladies. Um, One of the young ladies had a child at the age in elementary school,
Oh wow.
and had to go from elementary school to a um, it was more like a school for older kids, but she had to go there for 2 years because this man molested her, and she got impregnated by him twice.
Mm.
And then we have our men are being abused. We have that one coming. We also have our leaders are talking. We have and then to end this month out, we have trauma in the brain, where we have a therapist and a counselor coming, to talk to us about what domestic violence does to the brain. And then it's also a young lady that's going to tell her story, and they're going to help. And then in February, every Tuesday, you can find us every Tuesday from 7 to 9, bringing awareness on domestic violence through our virtual roundtables. But because next month is Teen Dating Violence Month, we are going to talk about February the 2nd is healthy, unhealthy, and toxic relationships. Um, February the 9th, I think, is I don't know, it's so many dates. But we're going to talk about everything dealing with teen dating. Also, January the 16th, let me back up to January the 16th. We are talking about human trafficking. We got the Greenville Police Department um, that will be on our virtual, bringing awareness on how human trafficking, how they determine whether it's human trafficking or not. Um, and then we have J Lock, we have Roger Green, and Sabrina Bristol Wiggins. And then in March, we're bringing you even more. We're doing trainings, we're doing it all. So just stay tuned, follow us on Survivors with the Testimony Inc. And you'll be able to see every event there.
It's a lot. It's a lot going on. Like I said, it's layers. There's so many things that you're talking about, that events that you're doing is just, it's about domestic violence, but then they have underlying issues that's related to domestic violence. One thing that I'll talk about is, as I advocate for, other things too, is that they all link in the community. Like you'll find some of the tactics that people use in human trafficking that abusers use themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, we specifically talk about domestic violence, but we talk about linking issues. Now, with your organization, a lot of things that you've been doing this for a long time. So how can people support your organization?
All right. So to support the organization, one, you can I'm trying to put it up here. If you want to donate to SWAT, you can do it through Cash App or you could do it through PayPal. And it's running. So it's SWAT Inc. 2020. You can give a donation anytime through Cash App or you could do PayPal, Survivors with a Testimony. We also are in the process of building our website, so we will be coming back. Hopefully by our next roundtable, we'll be able to post our website there. And we also have, if you go to our page, you will see our numbers where you can contact us for speaking engagements. However, you can reach any of us in our inbox. We are game to bring awareness any way that we can on domestic violence.
Great. Now, for people who are looking to get out of their situation and out of a domestic violence relationship or situation, or if people want to be educated more about, domestic violence and abuse, where can they reach you, or how can reach you for help, or how can they find you?
All right. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter is SWAT Inc. 2020. You can reach us on our website, not our website, but on our Facebook page as well, SWAT Inc. 2020. That's Survivors with a Testimony. And all our contact information is there. Y'all ask me to remember all these numbers. But if you're looking for us to speak or you need to get directly in touch with me, you can always reach us at 252-231-6541. If that's, if it's not an emergency, but if it's an emergency, it's 707-962-8738.
As we start wrapping up this episode, give us some parting quotes or parting shots for anyone else that's out there who maybe going through a situation, or their family or know a family member going through a situation.
All right. So if you have someone who's going through a domestic violence situation, first thing first, be a listening ear, not a running mouth. Meaning, just be quiet. Don't tear them down. They've already been torn down enough. The abuser have, just pulled them down to the lowest that they could. So again, just listen. If you cannot offer them help, direct them somewhere that will. If we're local, just contact us. We will be there to help bridge that gap. If you are not comfortable talking, the National Domestic Violence Hotline has a chat. You can chat with them. If you have a local Trillium in your state, you can chat with Trillium if you're going through. They will direct you to someone who can help you with your situation. Remember, your mental health is also important. So
True.
again, that's where Trillium will be very important, to help you get through. It could be just like texting a friend. They have the chat lines, and we will drop that information in the comments. Also, if you can help them to develop a safety plan or get them somewhere to get a safety plan in place, okay? Um, it's important. Now, if you have already left your abuser, as Mr. Hennett told you before, it's okay to quit your job. Listen, your life is more important than hitting a 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You can hit a 9 to 5 and be 6 feet under. Your choice. I say that all the time, but it's okay to walk away and start over. If you ever need help, just reach out to us. SWAT Inc. 2020. We're going to be right there to help you. Also, if you're going through, don't be ashamed. No matter whether you're a woman or a man, do not be ashamed of what you're going through. It is someone who has been through worse. Just know that your life is important. Your life is your story. Make sure that you live it to the fullest. The next thing is, remember, if you're in an abusive relationship and you have children, they see everything that you're going through. Don't allow them to be a victim, and don't allow them to become a part of statistics.
Right.
Remember, statistics say 50% of children who see abuse within their home become an abuser. 50 to 75% die.
Mm.
25% advocate. Get out so you and your children can be can advocate for domestic violence instead of being a part of statistics. Don't think that this is not happening in your neighborhood, because it is. As I stated before, 50 homicides in the state of North Carolina, and that's just statistics from January 1st to September the 29th. We still have October, November, and December.
And reported. Those are just 50 reported.
That was just 50 reported. And I'm pretty sure there's plenty more. Don't be ashamed. Get out. Stay out. Don't allow finances, don't allow fear to keep you somewhere that's not healthy for you.
All right. As we close out today, I just want to say, Vanita, it's been an honor to do this interview with you. It's been an honor to find out more about the organization SWAT. It's been an honor to hear your testimony, hear your story. Like you said, a lot of people don't tell. It took you 20 years to have a breakthrough. There's somebody else out there who's probably in year 20, year 19, year 18, who's having a breakthrough. Now they've heard your story. Now they don't feel alone. They don't feel isolated. They hear someone else has been through, what they're going through. And it's good that we have, advocates that's also, experienced domestic violence and been in that situation. When we advocate and when we talk about domestic violence, we need more people to understand and bring awareness that this is just not a gender issue. It's just not a man and female issue. It is it doesn't have a class. It's not a class issue. Domestic violence doesn't care if you're rich, poor, white, black, red, green, yellow. It can happen to anybody. And we do this to bring awareness to stop it. So it's been an honor today. And I will see you again on another podcast that we will be doing together, the many ones that we do together.
Yeah.
So for everyone that's out there, thank you so much for listening, tuning in. Thank you so much, Vanita, for all that you've done in the community and all that you continue to do in the community. Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys. Thank you so much, Mr. Hennett.
Thank you.